Today is a very special Points North. Today we are focusing on the Idle No More movement. In northwestern Ontario, 50% of our population is Aboriginal, and much of that lies in the Treaty 3 region. Later in the show, we're going to learn the exact importance of this treaty, as it was one of the first of 11 signed across Canada. We're going to be talking to Aboriginal community leaders, but first we're going to look at trending and see how social media has had an impact on the Idle No More movement.
Here's what's trending and picking up speed for Idle No More. In early December, rumblings of gatherings of First Nations were heard over Facebook and Twitter. Then, posts about gatherings popped up everywhere. December 10th in Kenora saw a protest in front of MP Greg Rickford's office, where many gathered with very little notice to show their intent on making their voices heard. Several other protests and blockades took place, and there were no words issued by politicians on the events happening. Chief Teresa Spence from Attawapiskat was all the while on a hunger strike in Ottawa, while thousands across Canada and the world took notice. This week, along with the gatherings, several road blockades took place and protests all over northwestern Ontario. Both Shoal Lake First Nations came together to show their support for the movement. And that's how social networking has been making movements for Idle No More.
We are now joined with Tanya Cameron, who is one of the leading organizers in the Idle No More movements here in Kenora and in other areas of northwestern Ontario. So, Tanya, first of all, can you give us a brief breakdown of what the Idle No More movement is about?
It's actually the Idle No More movement is about. It's about addressing a lot of the conservative bills that are being put forward in the House and in the Senate that we see is impeding Aboriginal and treaty rights in Canada.
Well, and I just want to thank you because you brought a lot of information on these different acts that are being changed, and I wasn't aware of some of the issues. So not all of the issues are necessarily about Aboriginal rights. Like they talk about changing waterway rights and land rights. So how is that affecting Canada as a whole?
Yeah, well, let me just back up that question a little bit. In terms of water and the land protection, as Anishinaabe, we are protectors of the land and the water. And what we're also saying to non-Indigenous people here in Canada, that these, for instance, in Kenora, Kenora is based on tourism. And we hope to attract Americans, people around the world, to come to Lake of the Woods to enjoy the beautiful waters. And because of the law changes, it actually takes off the environmental protection laws, and it should be of great concern to all Canadians and all that have waterways in their communities.
So can we go back and just talk about how Idle No More sort of has snowballed with social media, and how a small group of women noticed changes to certain acts and started talking? And you were talking earlier about how it's sort of, these issues have been peppered and been changed through multiple acts, but really has been targeting Aboriginal rights.
That's right. Well, again, because of social media platform, information is pretty much immediate. And when these women had gone on and developed these YouTube videos and sort of the history of what is going on with all these pieces of legislation, I already was aware of a few of them and sort of heard in the background other things were happening. So on mid-December, there was a call for December 10th Day of Action on these conservative bills. And it was on December 9th at noon, and I was calling people out, doing shout-outs on Facebook and Twitter saying, can someone organize this? I can't do it. I'm working. Can someone please do it? And there was no takers. So I chatted with a friend of mine, one of the other organizers, Donna Anderson, and she said, let's do it. So we did it, and the next day we had 130 people outside of Rickford's office rallying. And that's, because of social media, because the alarm bells are being sounded different places around Canada saying, hey, something's going on, we need to be aware. So I've been very impressed. And other events that have happened after that, we've had a few rallies. We had an information session. We had a January 2nd economic fast, and this was all done and motivated through social media.
Well, there's definitely an old saying that there's strength in numbers. Do you think the government is paying attention to these social media sites and the snowball effect with the global awareness that's happening on these issues? Do you think that all the people on Parliament Hill today, do you think they're noticing these opinions and views that are being made on social media?
Well, earlier on, I've watched media outlets where John Duncan was out there saying that, oh, it's just a social media thing, it's just a social media thing, and he wasn't quite concerned about it until the first day of December 10th, when hundreds of people, thousands of people right across Canada came out in a show of solidarity. And since then, I think the government is seeing that this issue, this problem is not going to go away anytime soon. So I think they're starting to pay attention. Prime Minister finally agreeing in a meeting. And then late yesterday, after some chiefs were saying if the Governor General doesn't want to meet, then there's no point in meeting because our treaty relationship is with the Crown. And so we get word that there will be a ceremonial meeting, not necessarily with the Prime Minister and the chiefs, but in a separate meeting later that evening.
So none of the acts or none of the changes to the acts have been consulted with Aboriginal leaders and whatnot. How do you think the meeting is going to go over today with the Prime Minister? Teresa Spence is also there. So what is your hope for the meeting and where do you think it's going to go?
Well, Teresa Spence actually is not going to be there because the Governor General won't be at the table. And so we have a number of chiefs, including in Ontario and Manitoba, that are supporting Chief Teresa Spence's stance in that and will be boycotting that meeting today. I think it's not a show in good faith. We've heard it through Greg Rickford just the other week, where he says we are going to clarify these pieces of legislation with the chiefs. That was how they perceive this meeting. Our chiefs are wanting a meeting to actually sit down and go through these bills, call for a halt to those bills, and then consult with the First Nations thoroughly before proceeding with any of those bills. But clearly the Conservative government is not prepared to do that.
Well, we are just gearing up now for the meeting, and a large group has gathered here today at the Best Western in support of the Idle No More movement. So stick around. We have a very big show for you today, and we're going to talk to a lot of the citizens that are here in support of the Idle No More movement. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you so much.
Today on Points North, we are taking a special look on the Idle No More movement. Treaty 3, which governs many First Nations people in northwestern Ontario, was a key player in the history of the treaty origins. Shelley Bujold has this story and gives us the history on that treaty.
Treaties were formed in the 1880s as a way to divide land and create protected areas for Aboriginal people. The original intent was to ensure land to Aboriginal people before hordes of European settlers came to Manitoba. On paper, the agreement was meant to compensate the First Nations from the influx of newcomers, protect them from famine, and aid in healthcare. When negotiations for Treaty 3, the area which incorporates most of northwestern Ontario, began, it changed how treaties were formed. Unlike in earlier treaties, the Crown was now named the caretakers of First Nations land and people, making the federal government the authority rather than the provincial. This change had a great impact on all of the treaties. Treaty enforcement came by way of the Department of Indian Affairs, now named Aboriginal Affairs. The department was now able to make sweeping decisions all across Canada. The Indian Act granted Indian Affairs the authority to say who was First Nation, who could manage their lands, decided on the use of their resources and money, controlled the intoxicants on the reserves, and aimed to civilize Aboriginal people. Dividing land was a challenge, especially in Ontario. Designation was encouraged to take place on unsurveyed areas, but since most of Ontario land had already been mapped out, it made it quite difficult. Treaty 3 was fairly remote, but known for its natural resources, rich fur trade, and railroad project. In other words, there was a vested interest in the land by government. Part of the Idle No More complaints deal with base treaty guidelines, protected waters, lands, and resources. The government has also enacted legislation for financial transparency, but more on that later in the show. We'll be posting more info on treaties on our Facebook page, so take a look.
I'm now joined with Donna Anderson, and Donna, I sort of snuck you out of the crowd because being one of the youth that are here today in support of the Idle No More movement, how have these changes or these bills that are trying to be passed affected you as youth?
Well, I think a lot of us young people we felt alerted to it only because we've always been told that, just sort of growing up we're encouraged to be educated into sort of the mainstream way of thinking, to going to university, seeking education wherever, but also maintaining our sort of traditional sort of teachings and knowledge, maintaining our connection with the elders and with the land. So I think that a lot of this movement is a result of that. A lot of young people are in fact taking the lead on a lot of these Idle No More initiatives, across the country. So I think that's why you see quite a bit of young people, powered up and ready to take a stand.
It's really been a global movement today. All across the world, there's cultures uniting on these issues. So how do you feel the impact of the global presence today will have on these issues?
I think that it is empowering to see for a lot of people. I mean that for a lot of our people, we feel that our voice isn't heard within the very same country that we live in, but then to see the support of other, nations and countries all over the world is very empowering, that we are getting our voice out there, and that, perhaps Canada will be looked at in a very much different way than it already is.
So what do you have to say today to other youth that maybe haven't put their word out there or maybe haven't been heard? What are some of the avenues that maybe they can take to take steps towards making a difference, making changes to these concerns?
Well, I think that a lot of youth already are taking advantage of things like social media, that they are reading different posts. There is some support out there on how to deal with, because when you are bringing attention to these issues, unfortunately, you encounter a lot of negative, a lot of, racism, racist comments. So there is a lot of support out there, from different people that do experience that. And, I guess the main message is to just keep forward, keep going forward. Our elders have always taught us, to not be scared, to just keep, if we believe in something, so much, to just keep going.
Put your heart forward. That's what one of the ladies had mentioned today too, and it looks like it's a global action. People are putting their hearts out globally, so I believe that we will make a difference.
I believe so too, yes.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Coming up, we're going to talk to some of the folks here at the Idle No More movement. As two of the youth here at the Idle No More movement, Rachel and Nadia. Nadia, you had played the drum earlier. So what made you think of bringing your drum to the Idle No More movement today? What's the significance to drumming?
Well, I drummed in Wisconsin, where I'm from, for like 7 years. So then I started a hand drum group in Kenora.
Nice. And so what was your song today and what meaning did it have?
It was about a bear, Makwa, and Monado is creator.
It was beautiful. You're a very good drummer and singer. So what does today mean to you guys, ladies?
I don't know, to like brighten up our future, to make sure that our treaty rights will stay.
So there's 43,000 once upon a time protected waterways in Canada. Now there's 98 or 93, and I believe 2 of them are in this region. Is it by Wabigoon and by Eagle Lake that their waterways are protected? So we are in Lake of the Woods territory. We are people of the land, we are people of the water. And when you are taking off these protection laws, we already, like I know in Dolls, we have people go out to our sites because we have natural beaches. And it's frustrating because people go and use these beaches and they pollute it. It's just disgusting sometimes. And we have young people go out and clean it. And we posted signs saying private property, property of the Dolls First Nation. But there'll be no protection laws on that kind of activity.
I'm so proud of them. I'm so happy for them. And I'm so grateful to them. This is their rightful role in our country because they represent the soul and the conscience of our continent.
But now it seems like there's always a dispute, always making new rules. So, in other words, I think, most of the stuff that we had been living by, should have been kept as it is. Our rights are usually taken away, and we don't even get a chance to be made aware of what, of what they are always changing all the time. And this is why I'm here, is to participate. No matter what is happening, I am there to listen and to learn, so I can pass it on.
Exactly. Well, thank you for your time today, Nancy.
Well, I hope it helps you.
When we do these idle protests, let's support our women. Let's get behind them.
Raping the land, like he's so much in control, and I'm surprised the Crown.
But one of the new things are we have to report them online. Like right now, if you go on the ANSI website, the Aboriginal Affairs website, you can see, Google your community or check your community name, it'll tell you how much money goes in there. But what they want to make available on that is individual First Nation audits. Some communities don't have a problem sharing their audit, but in principle, our audit is the business of our membership. It's not the business of anyone else. So that's a new piece to that. And how the media is painting that is that we don't want to be accountable for our money. And that is so opposite, because I think we said First Nations report just on ANSI funding 150 reports. It's even more than a lot of our municipalities have to report. If the government looks and sees a pot, I know this because I was a band manager, I know it. If they say, oh, we got an extra $360 and we'll send it to your community, they need a big report on that $360. and then you have to submit, you have to say what you did, what the outcomes were for it, for $360. That's how ridiculous it is. But we have to do it in order to keep the funding flowing.
We are once again joined by Tanya Cameron. And Tanya, today, after today's event, where are things going from here? Do you think the movement will keep going and growing? And what are the plans from now on?
Well, we do have a core planning group of people, and after what we saw today in the media and just hearing the discussion on the floor, that this is by no means an end to the Idle No More movement locally, and we are planning, we are getting ideas from the local community of what they'd like to see. So I imagine we're going to see more protests, we're going to see more rallies and more of our people coming together. We are talking about planning and organizing teach-ins, and we're just seeing if we, technology-wise, if we could have it webcast. So we've had requests from First Nations up in the northern remote communities ask if we could webcast. So we're looking into that as an avenue. But again, we're a core group of people, no funding, so we're trying to look at the most cost-effective measures.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having us today. We learned tons today, and we're glad to be a part of it.
Thank you for coming.
You can check out more of the Idle No More movement on Facebook. They have a page, and there's lots of comments going on there. You can also check out Points North on Facebook as well. Key search Points North. You can email us, and you can always follow us on Twitter. Thanks for joining us once again, and we will see you next week.
We got season 2 of Fishing with Gussie. Lots of big bass, lots of big walleyes, pike, muskie, big channel cats. I'm getting my butt kicked. This is so awesome. There's nowhere else in North America or in Canada that you can get fish like that.
Well, that's gotta go.
It's got over 36 inches. We have lots of fun, catch lots of big fish, and show you some tips Saturdays and Sundays on CJVN.